remember the first play you were in?
The first play I was in, I remember the first lead role I had. Is that okay? Can I say
Please.
that? The first lead role I had was in primary school, obviously. Born on the stage. It was a play called Cindy, and it was a modern retelling of Cinderella.
Of course, yes.
And
does she wear like Converse trainers with her ball gown or something?
well, it's set in a share house.
Okay.
And I played Cindy, obviously.
Yeah.
And instead of evil stepsisters, she had lazy housemates.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how was the sort of glass slipper thing turned on its head?
The Prince Charming was not a prince. He was a...
dirtbag from Brunswick.
Basically.
Yeah.
He was a musician. So, yes.
Yeah. Okay, sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I reckon I had like 2 feet of height on this guy. No, probably not. Maybe I had like 4 inches of height on this guy. I am famously 5'1", Dibbo.
You are
So
tiny. It is insane to think of you being taller than anybody.
Yep, exactly.
How old are you here? Primary school. So what?
So it was grade 6, so I would have been like 11 or 12.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Probably 11. And I had a few solos. My mother cried every night. And my mother still cries at most shows that I do.
Well, of course.
Obviously, because my performances are so bad.
My baby's a star.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, she's still waiting for you to go over to Hollywood and
Yeah,
be
exactly.
your meal ticket. You know?
She wants to be a real Kris Jenner type.
I remember in primary school being a bit of a showboat. Like I think
Just then.
even if you grow up to be kind of a shy person, in primary school, I think a lot of kids are quite extroverted.
Is it because they have no shame? I say that with absolute love and awe.
Yeah, they don't know shame yet.
Yeah.
They don't know that, it's embarrassing to be like legitimately keen on things and show enthusiasm. And when you get
good at stuff. Ugh, how embarrassing.
when you get to be a teenager, it's like having interests is lame and stuff like that. But yeah, I still remember like having for some reason a lot of times we would have PE. We would have drama in PE classes sometimes.
That's physical education. I love that.
I suppose so. Body work. And
Yes.
stuff. And I still remember like having so many ideas for things. And
Yes, and Dibbo.
Yeah,
Yes, and.
and having like, really convoluted stories for like little tiny exercises we'd have to do and really enjoying like making people laugh. Honestly, it was so surprising but incredibly gratifying that I did not become a comedian.
My heart is so full just picturing a young Lisa Dibb just being like, yes, and this, and then this, and then this. And it's like, just one yes and, thank you.
Yeah. It's this exercise only needs to go for 1.5 minutes, and you have written a 6-page setup.
One of my drama teachers, when like things were going on for too long, she would just be like, find an ending.
Julia Lambert, welcome
Yes.
to Re-AniMates.
Why, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I tend to do the introduction quite a ways in.
That's fine.
It's you're an actor.
Yeah, sometimes on my weekends. Keeps me out of trouble. Keeps me on the stage. In the
Seamless
hearts and the minds of the listeners and the viewers.
segue into that. Before we do this, did you know anything about this play that we're covering before we cover it?
So the only thing I knew about this play was that it has recently had auditions in Melbourne because it's being put on in Essendon. And one of my theatre circle people is directing it and a bunch of my theatre circle people are in it. And so I'm really excited to see it. And so I had read the audition notice and a little bit about the cast and was like, what's this about? And I couldn't quite glean any more from that. So I came in pretty dry.
Yeah, I have only seen this particular version once. I watched it initially as part of my very long ago
Entry into the Coombs world.
Combs, please.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Oh no, edit that out.
Kicking you off the podcast immediately. But yes, when I first started this project of watching all of his stuff, I watched this.
As a comb head.
As a comb head, yep. Just I'm for the listener, I'm making a gesture of combing my hair. That's our international symbol.
Excellent. How you recognise each other in the street.
Yeah. It's like a heil, but fine, but fine.
Excellent.
Yeah. So the play in question is The Skin of Our Teeth, and if you're wondering how we saw a play in our respective lounge rooms, It was filmed by a TV show called American Playhouse, which was a TV series from 82 to 96, which was basically filmed plays, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Because I would love to be able to watch more plays filmed really well. This I think was filmed fine, but it's obviously the version that we have is a very bad VHS rip. Probably the only way you can watch it these days.
Well, yeah, it was of its time.
Yes. And, obviously they were doing their best with what they could in 1983.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love that because I think the only other opportunities you have for that really are, some cinemas here, I don't know if they do it other places, but they'll do NT Live from the National Theatre in England, which obviously National Theatre, incredibly beautifully filmed.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can get it in Australia, but I think that there is an app or a website that you can subscribe to that you can watch Broadway plays and musicals.
There is, and I think they made it available particularly over lockdown, but the other places you can access filmed plays are on like the MTC, the Melbourne Theatre Company website, and a couple of other ones like that.
The actual theatre companies might have them, depending on how tech-savvy they are, might have them on their websites as part of a thing.
Yes,
afterwards.
you do have to pay for the behind a paywall.
Oh, of course,
But so that was something that definitely came out of lockdown, people wanting to still access live performance and perform and create live performance, but not being able to have an audience in the literal room, which is interesting in terms of why we would want to watch live performance and not just a movie. But that just speaks to the human condition, doesn't it, Debo?
Oh, it does. And that's all this podcast is about, is really it seems like it's about Jeffrey Combs, but it's mostly about humanity.
Yeah, beautiful.
There is something interesting about watching a filmed play versus a film, obviously, because there's a million different reasons why. But the main difference, I think, is the audience. Definitely the audience that they had here in 1983 in this one is the audience you want, because I didn't know they were there most of the time.
Yeah.
And that
also speaks to some of the comedy in it, and like joke a page as opposed to like joke a second.
Well, sometimes you don't want joke a second, because sometimes
here we go.
You got too many jokes in a row. The laughs run over the next
Absolutely,
joke.
but a good performer will know, Dibbo, to pause for laughs.
Pause for laughs. Pause for applause.
Pause for applause, and then you pause, and then nobody applauses.
Yes, and then you
never happened to me. Someone else I know.
Awkwardly segue into the next line. I guess it's always been a problem with live theatre of people not being like respectful to the performers and chatting and being sort of shitty,
or not laughing at the right bits, or
or laughing incredibly loud.
Yes. Why did you look at me? When
I did recently see one of Julia's plays, and there was a woman in the audience who, only for the second act, for some reason, bless her
Booze
heart.
might have had something to do with it. We're not sure.
Potentially. There was a lot of free sherry. Bless her heart, though. She had the loudest laugh I've ever heard in my life. Louder than your laugh, which is famously loud.
How dare you? But I'm laughing away from the microphone.
Yeah. Like, I think that people in the crowd just found it funny because it was so loud. And it was genuinely like, she would laugh after a joke and you wouldn't hear the line after that. And this wasn't like a tiny little 50...
This was a cackle. So one of the cast members recorded it and put it in the group chat. She was front row, Dibbo.
Yeah. So it would come up and over the rest of the crowd.
And sometimes she would get the joke a little bit after everybody else. So everyone would laugh and then she would have her cackle and then everyone would laugh at her cackle.
Yes. So there'd be a ripple effect, which again is not as bad as someone who's like being deliberately rude, like talking over an act or booing or something like that.
Or even worse, not laughing at some of the comedy gold.
Well, that's true. It was an incredibly funny play. It was a farce.
A farce.
So
absolutely.
It's great comedy, but
sometimes you have a quiet audience.
Sometimes you have people who are enjoying it, but they're not.
They're
not laughers.
Yeah.
That happens with, obviously we know a lot of people in comedy. So same sort of thing. Some people don't show it.
Yeah, they smile and they nod. They don't have a cackle like present company.
Well, that's the thing. The cackle makes up for the people that don't
doing the Lord's work, carrying the team.
It's a good thing. So as you can imagine, this being 1983, this is very young Jeff. On his IMDb page, this is actually the first thing in his entire career where he plays someone with a name.
Wow.
It's his, like, depending on, because obviously Frightmare, which was his first proper film.
Famously, as we all know.
It's contentious whether that came out in 81 or 83. His only 2 performances before this were the characters didn't have names. It was like first year intern. First one, you don't even see his face. He's just a voice over a drive-through speaker. Probably not going to cover that one. Probably not worth it.
Well, never say never.
Well, it may get down to the dregs. So the play is The Skin of Our Teeth, which is not a play I had heard of. It's by Thornton Wilder. I have no idea if you, humble listener, are familiar with plays at all. I'm going to assume you're not. And I'm just going to talk to you like you don't know anything about theatre, which I don't.
Samesies.
Well, so this originally opened in 1942, and the very first production that it had both Tallulah Bankhead and Montgomery Clift in it, which would have been fucking sick.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that. Also, fun fact, Jeffrey Combs later played Montgomery Clift in a film about Marilyn Monroe.
Look at this.
Yeah. Or his web connects us all.
Doesn't it?
And this one was at the Old Globe Theatre in San Diego, which I think was the place where Jeff studied a lot of theatre.
Great.
I think he moved to San Diego.
So he was a theatre actor before a film actor?
Yes. It's how we met.
True to the craft.
It's how we met Mr. Stuart Gordon, who he went on to go and to do a billion films with.
Excellent.
So Thornton Wilder, I think his more famous play was Our Town, which, again, I've only ever heard in passing. I read a little bit about him and, pretty classic, like, sort of early American playwright. But there was a little fact on his wiki, which I really hoped was true. So a few years after he died, there was a guy called Samuel Stewart, who was this very interesting character from, 30s to 60s sort of area. He was a tattoo artist in the 50s. He made porn. He was friends with Kinsey.
Great.
Like, he was just this writer and interesting guy.
And Bicon, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, look.
Of the
fun,
people.
sexy guy.
Yeah.
He revealed that he and Wilder had apparently slept together. And Stewart said that Alice B. Toklas had told him that Wilder liked him. And was apparently having trouble finishing Our Town until he and Stewart walked around Zurich all night in the rain.
Oh, my heart.
And apparently they did, and that's why I think one of the first opening scenes of Our Town, I think it's maybe the opening scene of the third act, opens at a cemetery at night in the rain.
Where we know romance lives.
Yeah, it's the most sexy and romantic thing you can do is walk around Zurich in the rain.
In a graveyard.
In a graveyard, yes. Life, death, savor it. I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is.
Yeah.
This production, I didn't recognise anyone else except for Jeff
Excuse me, Rue McClanahan. Okay. How dare you?
Okay, I did recognise one person. Okay.
That is Blanche from the Golden Girls.
Yes.
For those of you playing along at home. And my personal icon.
Shocking. What a surprise.
I aspire to be a Blanche.
Yeah.
But I'm a fucking Dorothy.
No.
Possibly a Sophia. Picture it. Me.
No.
Sicily.
You're the Blanche of my life.
Thank you.
Look at me. So yeah, I don't, apart from Rue McClanahan and Jeffrey Combs, I don't recognise a lot of people, but I think that these were people who, because the two main characters are obviously mum and dad, so they're a bit older, so I think they did theatre, and then later in their careers I think they did more TV.
And I think the maid, the Blair character, is someone as iconic as Tallulah, because Tallulah played that role.
Yeah.
But I didn't know.
I looked her up. The maid is, she's sort of, so there's a family unit, and then there's their maid who, as we go along, you'll realise why it gets
weird,
a little bit weird. But she sort of is occasionally the narrator.
Yeah.
Certainly in the first
She
act.
does a lot of breaking of the fourth wall, which please allow me to drama-splain to you.
Please.
So in theatre we have what we call an imaginary fourth wall, which is the invisible wall in between the audience and the actors, so that you're watching that screen, if you will, that wall, and then to break the fourth wall is to speak directly to the audience.
It's to acknowledge them there and to acknowledge that you are indeed in a play.
Yeah.
So that happens a lot throughout the play and to varying degrees. But in the first act, she is very much like the narrator, or I don't know if there's a word for the sort of...
like kind of the protagonist. And I don't know if that works as a term.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's a term for not a narrator, but a character that leads the audience through a story. You know, maybe there is some kind of wanky art term for that.
Yeah, there
but
probably
I don't know what
is,
it is,
and I should know it as an art wanker, but fuck, sorry. Letting the team down.
Well, so the main character is Sabina, played by Blair Brown.
They keep calling her Sabina. Anyway, that's all right. We'll get to the inconsistencies of people's names.
The thing that I think maybe modern audiences would know her from is she was a regular on Orange is the New Black. She played Judy. Otherwise, we've got the family unit is kind of our mum, dad, brother, sister team, which is Harold Gould as Mr. Antrobus. I'm going to trip up on that surname a lot.
Because it's a hard one.
It is a little bit. So Harold Gould did a lot of stuff, but my favourite item on his IMDb is that he was Grandpa Disguisey in Master of Disguise.
Great, excellent.
I'm sure the highlight of his career, I'm sure. Seda Thompson, who played Mrs. Antrobus, who was a regular cast member on a show from 1976 that was just simply called Family.
What was it about?
Can't imagine. No idea. Monique Fowler as Gladys, who's the daughter.
Yep.
And obviously Jeffrey Combs as Henry. That's our 4. There are some other characters who come and go, but we'll come to those.
And Dibbo, one of my notes is, Henry's a little fuck.
I think what's interesting in this, and it's very clear throughout the play, but I don't know how old the actress playing Gladys is, but Jeff is 28 or 29 here.
Yeah.
But he looks very young.
Absolutely.
But it is also, as we come to realise, the character is meant to be 4,000 years old.
Yeah.
So I guess it doesn't matter that he looks that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, even in Re-Animated, he looks quite young. So I don't know, obviously having not seen, we're not going to take this beat by beat because it's fucking long. But
it is. And it's a non-chronological narrative.
There's also a lot of places where it jumps in and out. And I don't know how they do that when it's a stage play because this is obviously filmed. So I am assuming there are things edited in afterwards. So I don't know how you watch these things live. But there's things like fake newsreels.
Yeah, I was really wondering about that as well. Like whether they were written in specifically for this or if they would have been delivered live on the stage rather than pre-recorded in.
Yeah, there's only a couple of things where I was like, oh, I don't know how they did that in 1942 or whatever, but it could have just been that this was just, they were like, yeah, this seems like a kind of fun thing to do if we're going to do it on TV.
My most favourite bit,
yes,
well, the bit that I first wrote down after Blanche, ! Was we're live and we're late. And I was like, is that in the script or is that probably just the show tagline? But I loved that. And then I thought of Blanche, who's got a wonderful tagline of better late than pregnant. And I think that is advice we can all hold to.
I take that with me every day. So in Act 1, it seems like it's going to be a pretty standard like family unit because the set is, just like a family house.
You haven't talked about the family pets yet.
No.
Am I jumping the gun?
I'll bring them in.
You get there?
Yeah,
okay,
I'll
good.
bring them in. Yeah, they're
iconic.
They're the highlight of Act 1.
Oh, mate, agree.
The maid Sabina kind of is talking us through the family in Act 1.
Before she does that, she says, I hate this play and every word in it, which haven't we all been there?
Well, I haven't. But no one's ever asked me to deliver their words on a stage. Maybe one day. Yeah, there is a lot of...
There's a lot of sass. She gets a lot of great sassy lines. All the good men are already married.
Yeah.
Like she's really set up as somebody who we're supposed to be endeared to because she's talking directly to us and is being really quite informal with us as well.
And that really helps because a lot of the play is very dramatic, declarative speeches.
Preachy, convoluted and referencing like biblical stuff and different kinds of it's quite ahead of its time in terms of what it is effectively saying about climate change. But anyway,
I don't even know if it was trying to say that.
I don't think it was.
Well, it's a very self-referential play. They do a lot of things with bringing in like a fake director and trying to imply that things are actually going wrong on the night. Which, to be honest, there was at least one point where I was like, "Is this meant to be happening?" And I was like, "Well, no, they wouldn't have let it on TV if it was."
Well, there were a couple of things where I'm like, "Oh, that's a fuck up. That person's dropped a line," or "Oh, I don't think that entrance should have happened there."
That could have just been bad
direction.
Stage
Absolutely.
direction.
I always blame the director. I don't, for any directors listening. But it did break a lot of those conventions around like a play within a play, breaking the fourth wall, pretty Brechtian. It kept reminding you are watching a play, the kind of absurdity in it, which I wonder if, when I think back to the original time in the 40s, like how was that received and how, I suppose, controversial it might have been for the time for audiences.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What does Brechtian mean?
Oh, fucking got me. I'm a wanker. Brechtian. So Bertolt Brecht was a very iconic and famous writer and director and creator and commentator on theatre and an approach to theatre. And so to do something Brechtian is to remind the audience that they are watching a play.
So stuff like breaking walls and...
Yeah, breaking the fourth wall and breaking down or having a set change being really obvious and part of the play as opposed to going to black or doing it like visibly. So trying not to hide behind the curtain, quote unquote, if that makes sense. So bringing some of that to the surface. So instead of trying to take people 100% out of their reality and put them into a brand new reality and suspend their disbelief, yes, you're suspending their disbelief, but then you're breaking them straight out of that and being like, oh, actually, this bed is actually made out of cardboard.
Yeah. And we're not going to try to pretend it's not.
We're not going to... because you're smarter than that. We're smarter than that.
Yeah. We know
we all know what we're
watching a
doing
play.
here. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've heard that term a lot and it's never occurred to me to look it up.
Oh. It's been a while since my theatre degree.
I'm taking you as the gospel of theatre for this
you.
podcast. She does say to the audience at one point, the author can't decide if we're back in caves or here in New Jersey, which makes sense because there is this, I don't know if you call it an allegory, but it's, well, I guess the idea is meant to be that Mr. and Mrs. Antrobus are Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Because Henry, Jeff, we do find out that he has changed his name, that he has a scar on his head that Mr. Antrobus doesn't like to see. We also find out that there used to be an older brother who was named Abel. And then we later find out that Henry's name was Cain, son of Adam and Eve.
Famously. And Mr. Cain killed Mr. Abel.
Yes,
in the
with
Bible.
A rock, I think.
Oh, I'm a bit sketchy on the details.
I don't know, but I mean, there is a recurring thing of Henry
is violent and has a rock
and slingshot.
Yeah,
which I think isn't that
how David killed Goliath?
David and I was going to say Samson and Delilah. Look, You're not
testing me on my Catholic school education.
I'm not a theology scholar. There's also there's a lot of interesting things because it does seem like a modern setup. Mum, dad, two kids made modern house, but there's also dinosaurs
and a mammoth.
So they've got pets that are a very funny looking dinosaur costume.
My God. The dinosaur for me is the fucking absolute highlight, especially when he gets the wheel in the nuts.
Yep, it was. My favorite thing was that the woolly mammoth had a little bow in her hair.
Oh,
that's how
I
you know.
didn't even know that she was a girl.
That's how you know she's a girl. Yeah.
Oh, of course, the international sign.
Well, Mr. Antrobus, and they talk about Mr. Antrobus having invented the alphabet and multiplication.
And the wheel.
Which
is therefore the lead up to the hilarious joke with the dinosaur.
You know, for all intents and purposes, these are just like regular people. They're
in a modern house, a rich looking house, and then they're talking about, the whole world's turning to ice. And I'm like, climate change, here we go.
Climate, but they're actually talking about a literal ice age.
Yeah. And did you clock this? There was a live fish on the stage.
A live fish?
Yeah.
No.
In the chair next to Mr. Antrobus, there's a little coffee table and a fish bowl with a live fucking goldfish. And I was just like, this is the best.
That's nice. That's a nice touch. The play obviously has a lot of moral messages that it likes to sprinkle through. One of them in this first act is about what would have been probably like post-war refugees.
Yeah.
Because people are literally like coming to the Antrobus house and trying to get help, and Mrs. Antrobus doesn't want to, and
we don't have enough for us. What are we going to do? We are going to have to sacrifice somebody, and it's a really interesting.
If we're to survive, like the only point is survival. So what do we need? Judges for. Something that made me really sad is they send the woolly mammoth and the dinosaur out into the cold to die. Yeah. And that really upset me, even though the puppets are really shit.
Oh, but they're very endearing. The thing that upset me about that was the fucking animals were sent out at exactly the same time as the judges came in. Send them out the back door. It was a very messy entrance and exit.
That's true. Yeah, because they don't. Because there is a back door that they do use.
Yes, absolutely. And it was so messy, and I could see the actors that were playing the judges. Like, I think the timing was off on that because they were all like, "Oh shit," and it wasn't acting because they then like scooched back into the backstage to then come forward.
The refugees that George has allowed into the home are all named after like biblical and classic characters. So there's Homer,
Moses,
Judge Moses, and
the Muses.
Yeah, there's 3 women of 9 apparently, quote, that are all, they've all got the surname Muse. Again, I'm sure that there is an in-depth text study about why certain characters are included in this, because if this is meant to be a biblical story, I don't know where Homer fits into this, because philosophy does come up in Act 3 a lot.
Noah's Ark comes up in Act 2.
Yep. Well, again, like I can understand if they're sticking with Bible stuff,
but
to chuck in other stuff, I'm like, I don't know how this all comes together. But
well, what I don't know, Dibbo, is how the fuck this won the Pulitzer Prize. But anyway, that's another story.
Jeff specifically has a lot of energy throughout the play. He is a funny little guy.
He's a little fuck, according to my notes.
He's a little fuck, but he's meant to be, and he plays it well.
Yeah. He doesn't have a lot of time on the stage or a lot of lines.
No,
so he comes in as kind of like that, and it's not even comic relief, but that levity and that energy injection.
A lot of energy, yeah. He's meant to be a real rambunctious kid, and he's obviously incredibly aggressive in a lot of things he does. He gets the most amount of time in Act 3.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff with the kids where they just sort of appear and, antagonize the father or the mother and then leave.
And he seems to have the strongest arc of the characters. So Gladys has fucking no arc.
She does have a baby in Act 3. That's not spoiling anything. It just sort of happens because I think because Act 1, 2 and 3 are all meant to be wildly different in time. So Act 1 is meant to be early days of humanity,
where the dinosaurs still existed.
Dinosaurs rule the earth. It's not Jurassic Park. It's literally that time. Act 2 is Act
2, we're in a hotel, bar and casino that Oliver Clark is singing at, apparently.
All right, Lisa, put in a sound clip of Oliver Clark here.
Is what I do every day. Anyhow, anyway. Any which way it goes. I like my 3-piece clothes.
People need to know the beautiful pipes of Oliver Clark.
This is where we see my girl Rue.
Yes, Rue McClanahan is in Act 2. She plays a fortune teller. Act 2
and it's a Playboy hotel and casino.
But again, what time period is this? Because this seems like that seems like it should be the 70s. But then Act 3 seems like it should be sort of around or contemporary to when it was written. So that seems like it's going back in time.
Well, see, I think that Act 3 is... I wonder if Act 3 is kind of the year 2000, the year 3000.
Vision of the future.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because we're back in the house, but the house is covered in ash.
Yeah, because the Act 3 is written post-war. It's like literally the day that our war has ended. It doesn't tell you what year it is. But this play would have been written during World War II.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't staged until 1942. And I think World War II was 39 to 45, I think. Yeah. So
I'm drawing a blank, Dimmo.
Yeah, well, I must have looked it up because I don't know how I pulled that. But so this is written ostensibly during World War II. So I would have thought that maybe the playwright was obviously speaking from experience of perhaps, living after World War One, and imagining. But yes, the idea that it could be like this is the natural future of humanity to kill each other. That makes sense.
And that these are the archetypes this is the archetype of a family throughout those stages of the universe.
In Act 2, George is like the president of the world or something. They've survived the Ice Age and everything. There's a lot of like discussions about what it means to be human. In Act 2, Sabina is a beauty queen in Atlantic City.
A Playboy beauty queen.
Yes, who wants to fuck George so bad.
It's an ulterior motive. It's for her personal benefit, not because she loves him or is interested in him.
No, but she's obviously like, well, I want to fucking marry the president.
5,000 year anniversary.
5,000 years.
And one of them says, and I regret every moment. And I think that's Mrs. Antrobus.
Yeah.
Who says that. And I was like, fucking yes.
Yeah. But then she's like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I don't believe you.
There was a line that George says early on in Act 2, which I very much enjoyed, which is, we pay our respects to those of us who are no longer with us due to cold, plague, and difference of opinion.
Is that not what humans do, is go to war over flittery little opinions about things?
Well, that's a lesson for all of us, Dibbo.
That's a comment. That's a
It's very poignant. Can we just put in like a little sting of like, ooh.
Studio audience, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Ooh. So, but in Act 2, George appears to be Noah because he is the one who is tasked with saving his family and two of every animal when there's a apparently world-altering storm, but obviously not until he leaves his wife for Sabina.
Yes.
As one does.
And not Rue McClanahan.
Well,
offensive. And she's only in the show for like 10 minutes.
It's not even really clear if the other characters could see Rue McClanahan.
Yeah.
Apart from Sabina.
Yeah.
Because she's like a fortune teller. So she's kind of she's kind of like one of the fates, I guess, in like Greek mythology.
Yes. But also I wonder about them not interacting with her about the status of her as the fortune teller in the casino.
She could also just be the sort of, in the same way that because she does
she breaks the fourth wall quite a bit as well.
She does a lot of what Sabina did in the first act with talking directly to the audience and basically telling them what's happening.
Your boy Henry, though, comes in doing some karate high kicks.
Yeah, look, I'll
highlight of Act 2.
I'll post a little clip of on the socials of the way Jeff is fucking smashing around in this. I don't know what he's doing. I guess the character, is meant to be quite Arrested Development-y. He's meant to be quite childish.
Yeah.
And he is quite childish throughout the whole play, which again helps because he's got this little baby face, cheekbones to die for. Obviously, very pretty Jeff in this era.
But he's also playing somebody who, if we were to take the 4,000 years old concept out of this, would be possibly 16 to 18 years old throughout this, but we know that it's played by a 28-year-old man.
Yes, and it is that sort of like man-child character. Both of the children are desperate for father's affection and approval.
Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of annoying, actually.
Well, look, there was one bit that really offended me, and it was when Gladys was crying. It's like, why are you crying, Gladys? It's like, because you don't like my stockings. And I was like, Gladys, I fucking love your stockings. They were pink fishnets with bejeweled. They were bejeweled, they were pink, and they were fishnets.
I didn't even see the bejeweled. I just noticed that Mrs. Antrobus obviously gets very upset when Gladys has come back from going for a walk in Atlantic City and is dressed noticeably sluttier.
Woo-hoo.
God forbid Gladys has some fun.
In Atlantic City.
With, I guess, lounge singers? I don't know what those guys...
At the Playboy Casino and Hotel?
There's some very interestingly dressed men. A lot of people dress like game show hosts.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's Atlantic City, baby.
Yay.
I imagine. So yeah, as we said, Act 3 is set after war, but there is a long interlude into Act 3 where there's the whole fuck around of breaking the fourth wall where the director...
Even before that, can I just stop you and say there's the piece where Sabina says, there's something I need to say to the audience, but I'm not going to say it. We're going to skip it. So it's basically this. I'm not going to say it because it will hurt people's feelings. The theatre is not a place where people's feelings should get hurt. And I was like, love that. Can I have it on a T-shirt, please?
Yeah, because I think she doesn't want to do the extended scene of Sabina stealing George from Mrs. Antrobus because she has a friend in the audience who
has recently been divorced,
which I think is a comment that's meant to be saying the other thing, if that makes sense. I think that we're not meant to agree with that character. The playwright is saying, well, you wouldn't stop a play and decide not to do something just because someone in the audience
is going to get their feelings hurt. The theatre is a place to challenge and have these ideas and push people into difficult conversations.
Yeah, you can't because look at how much it fucks up the
narrative,
the narrative, and the storytelling, and just the rhythm audience and flow experience of it. Having to take out something because of the chance that it might potentially upset someone. And I mean, that's a conversation that is sort of still ongoing forever and ever. Amen.
But it's also
no trigger warnings in real life. Blah.
Oh yeah, Dimo.
Oh, I'm coming for woke culture.
The other thing, thank you, Sky News. The thing that I thought was really interesting about some of the writing was the way that, and I interpreted this, and it may be perhaps at the time it was not interpreted in this way, and particularly if it was written by an American, no judgment. But in Australia, we have quite a culture of taking the piss and taking the piss out of ourselves. And I wondered about whether some of this writing is about the author taking the piss, where he's got things like, oh, I hate this play in every word in it. Oh, that's the worst line I've ever had to say on any stage. Yeah. And then when she's like, oh, I'm not going to say it. I can't. I won't. This is not where we should hurt people's feelings. Like, I think some of that, I find that really funny as a theatre actress. As I was watching it, I was like, is this a comedy? Is this a drama? Is this a dramedy? And I couldn't fucking tell you, but
it would definitely come down to the performances. I think that in a modern retelling, I think that maybe the comedy beats would be different.
Yeah.
Because obviously things have
changed.
Things have changed from 1942 to 1983 to now.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be completely different ways of making it funny. And
the context is different.
Yeah. Yeah, they could, and the messaging could be different. I mean, they could end up, as you were saying before, they could end up trying to make a more explicit comment about climate change and things like that. Yeah, you're right about the writer sort of making fun of himself and the play in it. Because, but maybe there is a sense of like, well, theatre is great and very important, but
it's also escapism. It's
also
a bit lighthearted.
Yeah.
And if he was writing in the wartime, sometimes people need a reprieve, but it doesn't mean that you don't have hard messages and stories to tell people in terms of like then, now, future.
Well, that comes into play pretty directly in Act 3 because the Sabina character, basically the war ends.
She becomes Sarah Connor in Terminator 2.
She's got a chopped mullet thing. It's really...
It was hot. It was great.
See, I don't know. I didn't think it suited her, but that's wigs in the 80s, I guess. But there's a point where she says that the cinema has opened again, and that you don't need money. They'll just take whatever you can give. And she says she has like
stock cubes,
which
like beef cubes, which I assumed are stock cubes.
Yeah, she has to choose between giving them to, I think, like the community centre or the state or something, and keeping one for herself in order to go to the movies.
Yeah.
Mr. Antrobus lets her have one, and she does it.
Because she gives them to him. She says she gives them all that she has and says, "Can I just have one back to go to the movies?"
Yeah, and she says every now and then I have to go to the movies, and you know what? Same.
And because the next line is, "My nerves can't stand it," and I'm like, "Get it, girl."
Yeah, it's and that's the thing. Even if you look at the history of cinema, even in times of the war and depression, people still went to the movies
to have that escapism.
You gotta. People still do it now. Like we're in a cost of living crisis, and people are still going to the movies because when you only have so much money to allow yourself pleasure, you sort of pick and choose. It's like, all right, well, I can't do that, but I'm going to allow myself $15 to go to this thing that I enjoy that is a good escapism. Yeah, that was probably the main, apart from my friends and family, obviously, that was the main thing I missed in the various lockdowns was going to the movies.
Yeah.
It was killing me not going to the movies.
But it is a real experience and a treat to sit alone together with a group of people in a big dark room and be voyeurs together and experience, have that shared experience whilst also having a solo experience.
Yeah, I think that's why the cinema, and I know that I know people in my life that don't go to the movies on their own. Which
I love going to the movies on my own.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's strange to me. Of all the experiences you can have, that seems like the one that is the easiest to do alone because you don't have to interact with anybody. It's fun to have a bit of a chat with someone afterwards, in the drive home or whatever, but yeah, inevitably
you don't need to.
You're not chatting. I mean, hopefully you're not like
I'd love a chat in a movie.
No. I won't accept. This is why you and I haven't been to the cinema together. Won't accept it unless it's like a rowdy screening of Rush Hour.
Make it happen.
I'll put one on just for you, but
Thank
otherwise, I can't abide it. It's got to be silence in the cinema.
So, Dibbo, when my younger brother found out that I go to the movies alone, and this was years ago before he had kids, he called me and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I've just went to the movies." He's like, "Who'd you go to the movies with?" I said, "I went by myself." And he goes, "You fucking what?" I'm like, "Oh, I went to the movies by myself." And he's like, "Why would you do that?" He's like, "Ring me. I will go with you. We know people. You can't be doing that." I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
And then, years later, he's now got 2 kids. And, I still enjoy going to the movies by myself. And he's like, I'd fucking give anything to go to the movies by myself.
I think I also, and this is deviating wildly, but the thing that I appreciate most about the movies is that really you don't notice if somebody is on their own.
Yeah. It's dark.
Yeah, exactly. When the lights go down, we're all the same. And to be honest, I mean, this is what we were talking about before about conduct in the theatre. It's gotten so much worse in cinemas.
Like what sort of things, Dibbo?
Well, no, not even fun things. Not even the old hand jobs of yore. No.
Of mine?
No. Of
I'm kidding.
the behaviour of people. And I'm not just going to say Gen Z because
I love to talk through movies and I'm famously a millennial.
No, I was at the movies the other day and there were people behind me and a friend, and they were so shitty. They were just talking really loudly and laughing like they were obviously having their own conversations. Which, if you're doing that and you don't be quiet after someone has asked you to be several times, so
you got to go Costanza on them.
Well, so what does Costanza do? Because I don't get the... I know who that is, but I haven't seen the episode.
So it's the one where George Costanza from Seinfeld says he will do the opposite of his instincts. And he's at the movies on a date with his beautiful girlfriend who he got from not following his instincts. And they're kicking the seats and they're laughing and throwing popcorn. And he turns around and he goes, "Will you stop kicking this? Will you shut the hell up and stop kicking the seats?" He's like, "And if you don't, just try me, because I will take you outside and I would love to." And he and then they shit themselves, and then the rest of the cinema applaud. And then Victoria, hi. She's like, "Oh, George." So that's full Costanza, Dibbo, which I would love to see you do.
I was pretty close to it, not that night, but a different time. But in this instance, so the friend I was with was much more polite than me, asking, "Look, can you please be quiet?" It's hard because there's nowhere to go unless you go full Costanza. And I'm not a yeller. I don't yell at people really. So apart from he was asking politely, I was just loudly shushing them.
Yeah.
And they just wouldn't. And then when we were leaving, apparently they were making fun of us for shushing them.
You know what you should have done? You should have got the people with the flashlight to come in and flash them.
It's very difficult because I'm not a confrontational person and I don't want to have to. And I can't relate to that because if someone shushed me in a cinema, I would die of shame.
I've been shushed.
Thankfully, I haven't been to too many stage plays where that's happened.
Yeah.
Maybe it depends on the size of the theatre because I think when you go to a very big theatre, like a Princess Theatre or a Athenaeum, something like that, people are like, "Well, I'm up in the back. No one's going to hear me up here." It's like, yeah, but the people near you will hear you.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if the actors can't.
Yeah.
I can, and I'm trying to hear the actors.
And the actors in some of those bigger spaces are often mic'd as well, so you've got more of an opportunity to hear them. So, the rustling of the lollies or the choc top or whatever it is, the spilling of the wine can be slightly annoying, but just for a smaller pocket. Whereas when you're in a more intimate theatre, and I know, Dibbo, you've seen me in some pretty intimate theatres, and so in those spaces, you can hear absolutely everything, the rustling of the lollies, the dropping of the water bottle, the sneeze, the snoring, not in my place, obviously. But, I think when you
people whispering to each other, it's like, well, if you're whispering loud enough that a person next to you can hear you, then the people around
on the
you
stage can hear you.
Yeah.
And if you're speaking at your regular talking volume, which you did also experience, I think, on the night you came to see my last show, where people were calling out the punchline when the door knock happened at the end.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. And I think it also depends on, because that last show was also an older crowd.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes older people have, I don't know, maybe just less not awareness, because I'm sure cognitively they're fine. But
perhaps their hearing might be on the decline. Perhaps they don't know that they're being as loud as they are. Perhaps they don't know that the acoustics are set up for people to not be mic'd and be able to speak at a regular talking.
It does affect it whether or not, because I have been to a show at a quite large theatre where the actors weren't mic'd, and it was really hard.
Yeah.
So Act 3 also has this long bit where there's the pretense, apparently, that a bunch of the actors who were meant to be in this act got food poisoning.
Not from the lemon meringue pie.
And so they're being replaced by volunteers. And there's this whole palaver about trying to get them, they're ostensibly they're backstage people. And, we've got to get them into rehearsal and stuff. And then when they eventually do come out later,
they're excellent.
They're really good. But it's like, this play didn't need that.
Did not need it at all.
I wasn't, because the people that come out for that bit aren't people we've seen already. So it's not like I knew them. I would have just assumed they were actors. It was really strange. It seemed like a way to fill up time.
Yeah.
It was really strange.
I think it was just a way of trying to break the conventions and be really new at the time.
Avant-garde.
Yeah. There we go. I'm like, what's the word?
Yeah. It's really, really, really fucking with your ideas about theatre, man.
Absolutely. Take that, Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, Thornton Wilder. There's a lot of sort of speechy kind of things about the nature of life and the characters
and the
that come.
Nature of war.
Nature of war.
I have nothing against you personally, but I have to fight you.
Yeah, the characters that end up coming out all play. I don't know if
the moons.
Well, they don't play figures of philosophy, but they play. So Mr. Antrobus he talks about how much he loves philosophy and that he would do this thing in wartime where he would assign stars to philosophers and then times to the stars. So he would say 9 o'clock is Plato and stuff like that. It really confused me.
It was hard to follow.
I really wasn't sure, but then these characters end up coming out and basically give like little philosophical kind of
bits.
Yeah, sound bites of Aristotle. And Jeff's bit in this is pretty fun. He's really like acting with a capital A.
Oh,
like he really steps up his performance.
Yeah.
So he's still playing Henry, but he like hates his father.
Henry is described as the enemy.
All right. Do something. And don't think I'm afraid of you either. All right, do what you were going to do. Do it. Shoot me. And don't think I'm any relation of yours. I don't have any father or any mother or brothers or sisters, and I don't want any. I'm alone. That's the way I want to be. Alone. So shoot.
The Mr. Antrobus says at some point that he won't allow him back into the house. I think maybe there's been a dissolution of sides or something. Like maybe Henry sided with the enemy and George was on the.
Or if we
whatever.
think about, if we kind of build the allegory out a little more, and we've got, again, stories about fathers and sons, but also stories about countries at war or something like that, and were allies, are not allies, and how that then kind of grows, and how to not have, I don't have anything against you personally, but politically we need to do this or whatever it is.
Yeah, how war is inevitable.
Yeah. It's easier to fight you than to live with you, is one of the lines.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I don't love when war is sort of built up in theatre as a necessity.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's true.
Agreed. And it comes from quite a masculine place. So it's the men saying these things, which I found quite interesting, as opposed to earlier, particularly in Act 2, when Mrs. Antrobus was talking about expectations of women and the role of women and the work of women seldom being done. And then the women effectively having to literally clean up after war, and particularly while the men are away, raising the children, cleaning up the dust, making the dirt sandwiches or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then, Sabina giving everything she has.
But I guess it's implied that war is sort of a necessity of like human life. And there's always stories, people have been warring since the dawn of time. And it's like, yeah, but I don't think it's inevitable.
Yeah.
I think that it's a decision people make. Because animals fight, but people war. And I think that's different.
And I learned that from the dinosaur in Act 1.
You learn how to make a really good-looking puppet. For me, my favourite bit is how much physicality Jeff does in this act, because he's moving around a lot. And there is one bit where he goes to attack George Antrobus, and he leaps onto this old man I was like, oh, that's not like a stunt double. He's just leaping onto this old guy.
Well, look, I was ready for it after the Act 2 fucking flying karate kicks.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's jumping. He just jumped on him from like a raised step, and he looked like he was going to attack him. It looked pretty fun. But there is that sort of like, forgiveness in the end. And there was one of the little speechlets that I liked, which was George talking about how after everything, you always have the impetus to sort of start again and fix things and be better, and that war has made him lose the desire to begin again. Yeah.
Maggie, I've lost it. I've lost it, Maggie.
What? What have you lost?
The most important thing in the world. The desire to begin again.
It'll come back.
No, I've lost it. This minute, I feel like all those people dancing around the bonfire. Just relief, just a desire to settle down, slip into the old grooves. Keep my neighbor from walking over my lawn. But Maggie, sometimes during the war, in the middle of all that blood and dirt and hot and cold every day and every night, I'd have moments when I saw what we could do when it was over. And that's something when you're at war, you think of a better life. When you're at peace, you think of a more comfortable one.
I can understand that as a response to war more so than thinking war is a good idea.
Yeah, the apathy afterwards and how you kind of come back from that. And one of the other lines that George goes on to say is, it's a dog-eat-dog world. It's the way that it is in this awful world.
What's the thing that Morgan Freeman says at the end of Seven?
Obviously a movie I've not seen.
No, you haven't seen any movies. The thing that Morgan Freeman says at the end of Seven, which is, he mentions a famous quote. He says, so-and-so said, the world is a fine place and worth saving. I agree with the second part. Which I like as a message, because it's like, well, things don't have to be perfect for you to want to keep it around, like the world's pretty shit, but what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's going to lay down and let the moss grow over you? No, you got to do something.
Yeah.
You got to do something about it. Which I think is the message of the play, but there is a lot of other stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
That gets a little bit confusing, but maybe I just don't know enough about storytelling.
Well, I think the comment about we've got to begin again, I think it's Sabina at the end that says, well, we go back to the start, and she repeats the start of the play again and talks again, we begin again, because that's all we can do. And then the play kind of ends in a really interesting way, because all through this play I'm like, the fuck is this? Which is fine. I do that through a lot of plays. And then at the end I had this moment of like, oh, wow, like poignancy. I don't know if that's the right word or if even that's the feeling that I felt, but I smiled and I had a bit of lightness to me when Sabina then says, we begin again. She said, the end of this play isn't written yet. And so that really kind of call to action to the audience of like, you have a responsibility to begin again. No matter what it is, we begin again. Humanity is a real thing. We can all have the opportunity to make change and make this a better place. Yeah. And as soon as it turns to shit, well, guess what? The only person that's able to turn that around is you by beginning it again.
Well, I guess the Antrobus family are meant to be representative of humanity. The term Antrobus is from Greek and basically means human or person.
Oh, there we go.
So yeah, that makes sense that they're meant to be like, these are this is who's representing humanity as a whole in this. So yeah, that's the skin of our teeth.
And so what do you rate it? Do you rate it or hate it?
Well, I don't give them ratings.
How many combs do you give it?
Out of 5.
Is it a comb over?
It's comb over. Is
that how you finish the podcast? You should.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, if I had to give it a numbered rating from my reviewing days, I guess I'd go 2.5 out of 5 combs. Just for, it's well directed and it's not without its charms. But it is very odd.
Yeah, it is definitely of its time. And I would be really keen to take you to go and see potentially more contemporary retelling of it.
I would, I would like to see a version that is a bit more updated, and like obviously like there was some issues with like staging here, which
And filming plays, like a lot of the time, acting for stage and acting for film are two different things. Something I wish somebody told me before I did my first film. Because, whoa, she's got a lot of face, which you need to tone down when you're on film because you're much closer.
Well, yeah.
But when you're on the stage, you're performing for the back row, baby.
Yeah, you gotta make it go out. You gotta play big.
Yeah.
But yeah, when there's a camera there, you can play small because they're
Yeah.
right in your face. So Julia Lambert, anything to plug?
Oh, I've got a show coming up for those of you that love the theatre.
And in Melbourne.
In Melbourne, if you love the theatre in Melbourne. If you love the theatre outside of Melbourne, well, I cannot help you. I absolutely can. But I'm performing in a show called Berlin. It is opening on the 19th of April, and it is playing at the Heidelberg Theatre. And I probably should also give a plug to the Skin of Our Teeth performance as well. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Do you want to rate me from the podcast? Do I get 5 combs?
Surprisingly, I don't rate the guests. It seems rude.
Oh, that's on you, not to their face.
Yeah, I've got a secret spreadsheet afterwards.
June 18 to June 22nd, and that will be in Essendon.
We'll have to go to that and then do like a follow-up episode.
the episode everybody's asking for.
I just want to hear
and
their thoughts.
If you want to come with us to see it,
Yeah. Well, obviously,
all the comb heads are invited.
the legions of fans, please come up to me at the show. Feel free to, I'm very like welcoming to my fans.
Absolutely.
So, don't be afraid to come up and tell me how much you love the podcast and stuff. As long as you're quiet in the theatre, that's all I care about.
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
Shut up in this and in
In
the
the
cinema. If you can. Otherwise, you'll get a shushing from me.
Whereas I might go full Costanza.
We can only hope.